Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Joseph Mahase. We're going to be discussing his amazing novel, An Intimate Guyana Journey, a Pomeroon Destiny Uncovered. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much wherever books are sold. But head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather the latest edition of this book. You surely will not be disappointed. And if you haven't figured it out already, Joseph was brought to our network by that same publishing company, Author Reputation Press. So listen, if you're a writer out there and you've written a book that you need help moving, well, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give people. Contact ARP. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and this is what they specialize in. Their fantastic team is standing by to take your calls currently. Head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all of the ways they're going to be able to help you maximize your creative endeavors. And listen, it is a true pleasure to have Joseph here on the line. Now, the moment you start to do research on his book, An Intimate Guyana Journey, you're going to understand the journey that you are getting ready to take. Now, listen, this is a fiction, right? It's loosely based upon true experiences. But this book is truly something that we jumped at the opportunity of having on our network. Because people, you hear me talk about it all the time. Through People of Distinction, we're constantly talking about the connectivity amongst our human family and how there's more that connects us than separates us. And this book symbolizes so much of what our network was constructed and built around. The book itself has a carrying message, an underlying theme of the power of love, respect, and compassion, and how each of those things can help formulate bridges to dismantle a lot of division that we have within society. Now, listen, I know I'm oversimplifying, right? It's not that simple, but it really can be when you break it down to its truest form. And I know that it's not as easy as that in the moment, but this is something that needs to be on your shelf. Because let's just call a spade a spade. If you need a fantastic book to get lost in to just help pass the time, well, this book has what you're looking for. But if you also want a deep novel that's also going to help you maybe shift your focus, maybe shift your line of thinking, and help you view things from a different perspective and be more empathetic at the same time, this book carries weight. Okay, and I'm here for it. I'm picking up what he's putting down. I know you're going to love this. And at the end of the day, don't take my word for it. Okay, take Joseph's. He's the expert. He's written the book. He's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. So let's bring him here with us. Joseph, first and foremost, man, welcome to People of Distinction. And thank you very much for being a guest today, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Well, Joseph, it truly is a pleasure to have you here with us, man. We're really looking forward to this narrative. As I mentioned in my opening, I think it's special from so many different areas that one could focus on. So I'm loving the fact that you wrote this book. I'm so appreciative of the fact that you're here to talk about it with us. Before we go into the book, though, Joseph, start by telling us a little bit more about your background, please.
Well, I'm a Canadian. I've been living in Canada for about 30 years now, but I was born in Guyana, so I'm of Guyanese origins. I'm married to my wife, Maria, from the South Pacific, and we have two grown children, Wenonah and Jose-Maria. And we also have another, a Yorkiepoo, called Maya. I spent my early years in the Pomeroon District in which this story is set. And I started school there. Later, I studied in Trinidad, in Ireland, in England, and Wales in the UK. And more than that, I've lived in more than 25 countries, and I've worked in most of them, in the Pacific, in Asia, in the Caribbean, and of course here in Canada. And most of my professional life was spent working in the area of international development. A large part of this has been as an international civil servant with the United Nations organization. I think that's a little synopsis of me.
Wonderful. Well, listen, without further ado, we got the synopsis on you. Let's get the synopsis of the book. An Intimate Guyana Journey, a Pomeroon Destiny Uncovered. Tell us a little bit more about the words that are on those pages.
Like I mentioned there, the book is set in the lush and exotic Pomeroon River District. That region of Guyana is a place people don't know too much about, but it is a beautiful place where a beautiful river keeps running, a tidal river runs on the coastal area of Guyana there. The story covers a span of 4 generations in a family's life's journey. The book builds a story of this family told from the standpoint of the main character, a person called Vernon Atkins. Mm-hmm. And that lead character is a young man, the son of farm workers. And also he is of the indigenous peoples. He's a First Nation. His parents are Dennis and Anita Atkins, a loving couple who nurtures that love and that respect for others, particularly his elders and everybody else, and the environment they live in. Vernon saw the values of work, honesty, caring for people and for the elders. And this was taught to him living day to day with this loving couple, his parents. However, that peaceful coexistence at one time was shattered. And that was the beginning of this narrative. Vernon had to stay with the owner of that plantation, wealthy lady called Madeline. He lived in a humble thatched cabin, so he had to stay in this big mansion with this woman. And this was a massive shift. He had to adjust. He had to adjust to this woman that he stayed far away from, this plantation owner. And he had to stay in this big mansion that he never went in before. So that was quite an adjustment. But over time, a conversation began between him and this old woman. And in this long conversation over time, a revelation was discovered. He realized that they were related. And how they were related was because of this old lady's father. He had an affair with the daughter of one of his farm workers. And that farm worker, that love affair produced a child. And that child turned out to be the grandmother of Vernon and the half-sister of this old lady that he was staying with. Mm-hmm. It was quite an opening up for him. At the end, the story returns. I'm not giving away too much. The story returns to where it all begins. Rafa DeMello, the father of Madeline, and it goes on later on, ironically, to Vernon's love for somebody else, for someone who is the daughter of a wealthy farm owner, a wealthy plantation owner, and that wealthy plantation owner despises, he detested it, he didn't want it. And so he sent his daughter away from the district. Vernon went in search of her, eventually found her, and the effort was successful. Love wins in the end, defeating prestige, I would say, power, wealth, and the gulf between those who have a lot and those who don't have too much. So that's basically the story in a nutshell. It goes right round in a circle, back to an irony, one might say. I don't want to give more than that, I think.
No, listen, smart man. All right, people, you already know Amazon, Barnes & Noble, AuthorReputationPress.com. You want to gather more, you got to purchase your copies, okay? Get lost in the journey. You know, Joseph, next question that I'd love to get into, and, really curiosity, because I'm trying to connect the dots here. And I can understand, given your background, and of course, as you said, you are from Guyana. So I get connecting the dots. I can assume why writing a book was of interest to you, right? To put it into that setting and develop it that way. But your background isn't in writing, right? So talk to us a little bit more about why you felt compelled to write this narrative and not keep it on your personal shelf, but publish it for the world to partake in it.
That's a very good question. I tell you what, I am so fascinated by that river. It's like the old man river, you might say, running nonstop. A coastal river, tidal river. Very beautiful. Awe-inspiring. It welled up in me a lot of sentiments that I felt compelled to put in writing. I took a liking early in my years, at 14. And a lot of it was inspired by this beautiful tidal Pomeroon River. It was a rich source of inspiration. And that river inspired the story that I wrote, because the people of that region were very unique also. That way of life there had a lot of things I found later was so different from other places, so unique, and had to be pointed out. The people there had a softness about them, and equally a toughness as well.
Yeah.
And that softness and toughness intertwined with each other. That made them different. So that is actually what pushed me towards writing this story, is to tell a story about that area, that beautiful area, and about the people, beautiful people that had these unique characteristics, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Joseph, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this throughout the entire journey? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting before you began on this journey?
The thing that surprised me about writing this book is that I could actually take those experiences and weave them into a story, an integral story, a comprehensive story with a beginning, a rich middle, and a good end. Mm-hmm. That surprised me because, as you said, I am not a writer by career. I happen to write a book, but I've had a lot of formal education that I could actually take these pieces and weave them. And I think that's what I was able to do. That surprised me that I was able to do that successfully.
Yeah. Well, listen, as I listen to you talk now, and when I brought up the fact that your background is not in writing, that was, of course, not, and I know you don't take it this way, but that, of course, was not to say that you can't be a writer just because you don't have a background in it. But I think what is a great point and really a source of inspiration that I view from this is, people, you can do anything that you set your mind to, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be something that you had a love for your entire life, or something that you dedicated, your entire life to, right? And of course, don't get me wrong, right? There is something to be said about the years of commitment that goes into perfecting a craft. Absolutely. So not belittling that. But I love the fact that, listen, this, as he stated, this was not his career path, but it was something that brought him such a joy, right? When he thinks about that river, and brought him such a wonderful inspiration that he had to share it. And I think that that's a fantastic notion, because I talk to people constantly, writers specifically, that say, I didn't know that I had it in me, right? I didn't realize that this was something that I carried until I was spurred on by some type of inspiring quote or person that helped me see the forest through the trees and really help, clear my way. And I love the fact that, again, you didn't have a career in writing, but you didn't let that stop you. You had this inspiration and you went for it. And I think that in and of itself is wonderful and such a beautiful notion that I had to make sure that I acknowledged, and I didn't want to go by it without pointing to it. As we start to close out here, Joseph, last couple of questions. Two-part question here with this next one. But first and foremost, who would you say is your intended reader with this book? And what is the main message that you hope your readers take from it upon completing it?
Well, I would say the audience I have in mind for this book was anyone who loves reading family stories. Mm-hmm. Anyone, anywhere in the world, and who love to hear of life in other countries, like myself. I love to hear how people live in various countries, different from mine. I also think people who already have a connection with Guyana would be part of my audience. Yeah. Including Guyana has a large diaspora. A large Guyanese population lives in U.S., in Canada, in the U.K., and in other parts of South America. And I think that's part of the audience.
Beautiful. And for your main message, or at least one of the messages that carries throughout, I know we've touched up on it already, but I think it's so important that for me, in my perspective, from a philosophical perspective, I think that it carries so much weight. So I think it's worth doubling down on and repeating. But what is the main message that you hope your readers take from the book after they finish it?
Well, like I said earlier on, this book is a testimony to, I would say, less publicized values in society. Something like the love of life, mm-hmm. like arduous work, like harmony amidst a lot of cultural divides and racial divides and other social divides. Mm. And I think the message is there's a possibility to bridge the gap between those who have a lot and those who have little, between the haves and the have-nots. Yeah. I think it fosters empathy. You were used that word earlier on. It fosters empathy between classes, especially the upper and the working classes. And it provides inspiration for the healing power of compassion and understanding and open-mindedness. And I think that's it. That's what I've been trying to capture in this narrative.
People, there was a reason why I wanted Joseph to go into that. As I mentioned when I posed the question, right? I mean, it's something that we had gone over and covered earlier in the interview, but it was so important that it was worth doubling down on. Because for me, as someone that has always considered myself to be very empathetic, could we imagine what the world could look like if we operated from that standpoint of love and compassion and understanding and respect amongst different cultures, amongst differences, economically? Like, my goodness. It is something that, I'm an optimist by nature, so I look forward to it. I know that there, especially nowadays, seems to be a lot more division, and it seems to just increase upon the day. But I'm holding faith that if we have more discussions like this, if we have more books that we read like this, if we see more things like this on the screen in front of us, our focus can start to shift. And we can be programmed to love, not hate. We can be programmed to connect, not divide. This book offers so much. And again, I can close out the interview here, and I'm satisfied because I think this is something that is truly special. And if you haven't gotten it by now, you need to wake up because you're clearly asleep. But I want to take this opportunity as we close out to utilize the platform and paying it forward and offering words of wisdom to artists out there, because I do think that I have an obligation as an artist myself, and the platform that I have, I do always want to make sure that I offer that to my listening audience members. So Joseph, as someone that has written a narrative, gone through the gauntlet of getting it published, hopefully has much more to offer on the horizon, what are some words of wisdom that you would like to offer to our listening audience members? Anybody out there that's a new writer just starting out on their journey, what would you like to tell them?
Well, I think what springs to my mind is the word express. If you have things deep within you, express them. Mm-hmm. Express them whichever way best you can. For me, I found writing as a strong form of expression, and I chose that to put this narrative in. As a young man, I wrote quite a bit of poetry, and that was my way of expression as well. So my advice to people is that you have things on your mind, you have things deep in your system, sentiments. Bring them out, express them. Choose whatever vehicle you have or you think you can use, and use them. That would be my little advice to people.
Listen, people, Joseph is speaking my language now, okay? Because, again, this is another notion that we love to talk about here through People of Distinction, and this is really one of our mission statements when the network was created. Is we truly believe, listen, first and foremost, not everybody gets to be written about in the history books, right? But just because your story isn't deemed worthy enough to be talked about in history books does not mean you don't have a story worth telling. And we firmly believe that.
Correct.
Through People of Distinction, we firmly believe that everyone has a distinct voice. Everyone has a story to tell. And we love having this platform to utilize as a microphone to shout it out to the mountaintops, because we firmly believe that everyone has their own special story that they can offer. That is fantastic advice. Take it and run with it. Listen, as I mentioned before, if you haven't gotten it now, you're asleep. Wake up, okay? Amazon, Barnes & Noble, AuthorReputationPress.com, amongst a plethora of other places. Head on over there today. Pick up your copies of An Intimate Guyana Journey, a Pomeroon Destiny Uncovered by Joseph Mahase. You surely will not be disappointed. A wonderful resource and a wonderful journey to add to your shelf. But get this, it's an even better gift to add to someone else's. So you know where to go. Joseph, this has been a true pleasure, man, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you. All the best to you, Benji.